Welcome to Overnight Market Brief, Pre-Market Edition by AGI Era. Good morning. Today is Thursday, January 8, 2026, and it is shortly after 8 a.m. Eastern Time. This is your executive summary of global market developments, analyzing the overnight flows in Asia and Europe, the key macro drivers, and the setup for the North American Open. The prior session and macro context. First, a look back at yesterday's close. Wall Street finished on a defensive footing, with a slight divergence in performance. The S&P 500 settled at 699.21, down 0.34%, while the Nasdaq 100 was marginally higher, gaining 0.06% to close at 25,654. Crucially, the session was driven by a cautious sentiment ahead of key economic data. But the real story right now is in the macro assets. Right now, the 10-year Treasury yield is trading at 4.167%, up 0.39%. The U.S. dollar index is higher at 98.527, while crude oil is up around 56.87. Gold is under pressure, trading down 0.71% at 4435.46. The uptick in the 10-year Treasury yield is acting as a headwind for equity futures this morning, while the stronger dollar noted in overnight narratives typically creates a drag on risk assets. Crude oil's rise suggests some underlying demand resilience or supply concerns. Overnight session, Asia and Europe. Moving to the overnight session, global markets have been largely defensive. In Asia, the picture was mixed to lower. In Tokyo, the Nikkei 225 finished down 1.62%, tracking broader regional weakness and a stronger dollar. Meanwhile, in Greater China, the Hang Seng fell 1.17%, while the Shanghai Composite was flat, down a marginal 0.07%. The divergence here reflects specific regional dynamics, with the Hang Seng under more pressure. In Europe, major indices are trading with a cautious tone. Eurozone producer prices rose while UK house prices fell, and firms trimmed wage growth expectations. German manufacturing orders, however, showed a positive surge. This mixed bag of economic data, combined with the overnight macro moves, provides a defensive lead-in for U.S. traders. U.S. futures and the open. Turning to the U.S. pre-market, equity futures are under pressure. S&P 500 futures are trading down 0.26%, while Nasdaq 100 futures are down 0.26%. The broad-based decline in both S&P and Nasdaq futures suggests a general risk-off sentiment, with rising yields and a stronger dollar weighing on both growth and broader market segments. The Daily Catalyst. Looking ahead to the session, investors are focused on three key catalysts. First, the Eurozone Producer Price Index data, which was released earlier this morning, will be digested for its implications on inflation and ECB policy. Second, German manufacturing orders will provide further insight into the health of the Eurozone's largest economy. And finally, the Bank of England's Wage Growth Expectations Survey will be closely watched for signals on UK monetary policy. With a light calendar of Tier 1 US economic data, flows may be driven primarily by technical positioning and the ongoing digestion of global macro themes, particularly the trajectory of the dollar and bond yields. Given the overnight setup in rates and the dollar, the market's path of least resistance appears to be range-bound, with a slight downward bias, pending any surprises from the data releases. That concludes your overnight market brief. Disclaimer: this podcast is not financial advice. Data may be delayed or inaccurate. Always conduct your own due diligence.